Wow. $1,000 to get there. There's that, yeah, we're guessing we're gonna pay them to do this. Yeah. Even worse than thought we ran. And the others or something. So, well, greatest job. Yeah. I work my job. It's more easier to for like 3 hours.
It's too late to go. It's too late to
What's that?
Would it be too late to grab everyone and go outside and go group photo with Marcus really quick?
That's the mayor right there.
Just leave, but.
Outside?
Yeah, just on this side over here to the shades really. Quick group photos with Marcus
Before the meeting?
and then.
You know what? We're gonna rush out there
Yep.
and do it.
Super quick.
Do a picture quick now.
Sorry, my fault. Very fast.
Put your best hat on.
But then you dress.
Fifteen. People. All right.
Once you look at all that.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the Yreka City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 16th. Mr. Claire, would you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The City Council met in closed session beginning at 5:30 with no reportable action taken. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Good evening, Yreka City Council. Please let me know you are in attendance. Drake Davis,
I'm here.
Paul McCoy,
Present.
Corey Middleton, James Clare,
Here.
Pauline Baker.
Present.
Thank you.
Item 7 on the agenda is presentations, and this is the Yreka Fire Department. Chief Lemus is... We're going to grab Chief Lemus. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, did you want to approve the agenda prior to?
Oh, thank you. Yes, let's go ahead and approve the agenda. Does anybody have any changes they'd like to see on the agenda?
Yep.
All right. Do I have a consensus? The agenda is approved as presented?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Presentations, Chief Lemus.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Chief Jerry Lemus, Yreka Fire. So tonight is a very special occasion for YFD. We embarked on a program some years ago. Seems like it's been an eternity, but through the process of getting all the plans ready for a new station. In addition, a huge step forward was to hire paid staff to kind of stem the tide of all these responses that we have now on a volunteer agency. So with that, tonight I'd like to introduce Captain Marcus Smith as our first hire in the process, and we'll have a badge pinning ceremony. So come on up, Marcus and Stephanie. So Marcus comes to us with a lot of experience, many years of experience. He's got a great work ethic and he's a gentleman through and through. So tonight we have his wife, Stephanie, who will pin on his captain's badge. So if we're as fortunate to get some other candidates who are as dedicated and as kind as Marcus is, we're going to be in good shape. So thank you very much, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Welcome, congratulations.
Item 8, public comment. Public participation is welcomed and invited at all city council meetings. This time is set aside for residents to address the city council on matters listed on the consent agenda, as well as other items not included on the regular agenda. If your comments concern an item noted on the regular agenda, please address the council when that item is open for public comment. The city requests that persons addressing the council refrain from making personal, slanderous, profane, or disruptive remarks. Council members, when recognized by the mayor, may ask clarifying questions of presenter, but no action may be taken by the city council during the public comment section of the meeting. Under the Brown Act, the city council is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the posted agenda. Please speak into the microphone from the podium. The podium electronically adjusts up and down to accommodate the speaker. Please address the council as a whole. Please state your name for the record prior to providing your comments. If you have documents to present, please provide a minimum of 7 copies. These become a public record. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. And since council is unable to take action on issues not on the agenda, your matter may be referred to staff for follow-up or placed on a future agenda. The public comment period is not intended to be a question and answer period or conversations with the council or city staff. Do I have any people here wishing to make public comments?
Hello, my name is Judy Crawford. I live in Deer Creek in the Crystal Glen Mobile Home Estates. I have 2 things I'd like to talk about just for a moment. Number one is the state of that property. I don't know whether it's a park or not, across from us that's named Deer Creek Park. We are very concerned it's not been mowed. And there's trees that are down from the hailstorm. It's a mess and it's really deplorable. I know that you have lots of work in your public works department, but there needs to be some attention given to that property. Secondly, I don't know whether you as the council are aware, but the people that are on permanent lots in the Yreka park next to the fairgrounds have had a massive increase in rent, those that are there permanently. And addressing the rent stabilization ordinance is really a priority. Also, the older Yreka mobile home park on Main Street is for sale. And one of the things they're saying is that the potential for a rent increase for potential buyers is very high. And so I urge you, I know you're not getting anything on this until the last meeting in October, but please do your diligence on, it's not just for Oak Ridge and it's not just for Crystal Glen. Thank you.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Louise Gliotto and I live in Yreka. And I just wanted to call to your attention that today or tomorrow is Constitution Day. And I did put some pocket constitutions on there, so if anyone doesn't have one, please take one as you leave. And on December 8th, 2004, hidden deep inside the 3,000-page consolidated appropriations bill, signed into law, was the following verbiage inserted by the suggestion of Senator Robert Byrd from West Virginia, whose aim was to promote civic education and awareness of the Constitution. And what it says is that each educational institution that receives federal funds for a fiscal year shall hold an educational program on the United States Constitution on September 17th, which is tomorrow, of such year for the students served by the educational institution. It also provided that the designation of September 17th be changed from Citizenship Day to Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. As George Washington said, a primary object should be the education of our youth in the science of government. In a republic, what species of knowledge can be equally important, and what duty more pressing than communicating it to those who are to be the future guardians of our liberty of this country? So in saying this, I'm asking the council to consider somewhere down on your agenda before next year to do a proclamation for the city of Yreka declaring September 17th Constitution Day, because next year is the 250th birthday of our Constitution. Thank you for your consideration.
My name is Jan Osborne. I live in Yreka, and I'm here tonight to issue some challenges to all of us here on how we can celebrate Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. But first, a little history. On September 17th, 1787, when Benjamin Franklin was leaving Constitution Hall in Philadelphia, a woman in the crowd asked him, "Dr. Franklin, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy?" His answer was, "A republic, if you can keep it." And I want you to remember those words, if you can keep it. Benjamin Franklin was well aware of the historical precedents for republics that had collapsed into despotism and monarchy. And all the other founding fathers were aware of that too. But they had faith in the American spirit, the American people, that we could be a self-governing, free people. It's not easy. John Adams, one of our founding fathers, gave us some clues, some guidelines on how we can keep the republic. His comments were, this Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for any other. Our founding fathers knew the relationship between morality and religion. But they didn't put religion in the Constitution. It was up to the individual to choose what religion they wanted to do. Whether they were Christian, deist, or theistic rationalists, as our founding fathers, that was how they were kind of divided up. They believed that morality and virtue and religion went hand in hand. Now for some challenges. On Constitution Day, I challenge each of you, and I'm going to do it again, to read or reread our Constitution. Mrs. Gladio has put some constitutions over here. If you don't happen to have a copy, please take one at the end of the evening. Be thankful that you are a citizen of the United States of America, whether it's by birth or naturalization. For most of us here, I would say it was by birth. Cost us nothing. All we had to do was be born, and we were a citizen. Naturalized citizens have to go through many years of struggle and take a test. I didn't have to take a test to be a citizen, but I'm challenging all of us to go online and take one of the U.S. citizenship tests or a U.S. civics test and just see how well we know our history and our government. I think of Senator Philip Graham, and I challenge you also to think, or we should all think this way. Are we riding in the wagon or are we pulling it? In other words, are we doing our part or are we letting somebody else do it? Let's each do our part. Look for ways to become involved in your community, whether your community is your family, your school, your city, your county, your state, your country. There are innumerable ways to be engaged and involved. And our founding fathers also pointed out, a republic requires an engaged and involved citizenry. The goal for these challenges to all of us is to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. In other words, to keep the republic. God bless the United States of America.
Is that high enough? Hello, my name is Talia Nicholson. I'm the owner of Bella Artworks located on Minor Street. As a business owner, I'm required to follow numerous regulations and pay various fees to the city. Every year, I pay a business license fee, a food permit fee, and property tax fees for the equipment I previously purchased to run my business. There are regulations that restrict the signage on and in front of my business, the colors I paint my building, and how I operate. If I fail to abide by these regulations, I will suffer consequences from the city. I am here to ask that everyone be treated equally when regulations and ordinances are not followed. I have been physically and verbally assaulted by local unhoused individuals at and outside of my business. Myself and my staff have had to step over human feces while taking out the garbage, as well as witnessing individuals urinating in open sight of children walking by. I have witnessed blatant drug and alcohol abuse taking place in these areas. The piles of sheer garbage that are consistently allowed to be spread over our sidewalks, benches, and public gathering places by Harvey, Bluebird, and Tyler, to name just a few, is unacceptable. Yet this has been going on for years. I have provided pictures of what the young children and families get to see while coming to grab an ice cream or attend a birthday party. I find it interesting that if the businesses on Minor Street want to hold a wine walk or an art hop, there are permits that are needed and gasps of concern for what the children might see. However, what is happening daily by some of our unhoused community members goes ignored. I generally do not agree with Mr. Love, who provides regular reports on council meetings. I do, however, agree with him on one point. This issue is the fault of our city council, not because the Hill was shut down, but because from the beginning, there has been no accountability of our unhoused population. The lazy approach of just allowing individuals to do and live as they please in public places is not only cruel to them, but has cultivated a climate of lawlessness and lack of respect for our city and its citizens. Let me be clear. I'm not saying our unhoused should not be allowed in these areas. That would be discriminatory. It is not the individual, but the behaviors that are a problem. I do not have the answer to the housing issue, but I do know that being without a house should not equate to being allowed to terrorize others and destroy our city. A regular foot patrol of these public gathering areas would do wonders for the problem. I've witnessed law enforcement, other city workers, other city council members walk by ignoring the plaza, ignoring things that are going on. Lastly, if you're not familiar with the individuals I named and referenced above, I beg you to please really ask yourselves how well you can represent the people when you're that disconnected. And if it's okay, I do not have enough copies of these photos to give to everybody because my printer can only do so much, but I can either leave them for people to look at or pass around or set over here. What would be appropriate? Leave it over here or let them pass it?
You can leave it on the table there.
All right.
Thank you.
If anybody would like to see your photos. Past couple days or months.
Are there any other public comments at this time? I'll move on to item 9, the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and non-controversial and will be enacted by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. A, approval ratification of payments issued from August 10th, 2025 through September 6th, 2025. B, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held August 19th, 2025. C, approval of the minutes of the special meeting held August 27th, 2025. D, approval of the minutes of the special meeting held September 9th, 2025. E, motion to direct the city manager to waive the park reservation fee for the special event known as the 2025 Yreka Elks Invitational. The recommended action is to adopt the consent agenda as presented. What are the wishes of the council?
Council Middleton, I will make the motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Middleton, second by Councilmember Claire, to adopt the consent agenda of the City Council of the City of Yreka as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 Aye.
Yes. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. There are no public hearings tonight, so we're moving on to item 11, which is city business. It's the municipal projects manager. The agenda title is Discussion Possible Action Regarding the Adoption of Resolution 2025-31, authorizing the city manager to award a construction contract to RTA Construction Incorporated for the water supply and storage improvements project in the amount of $6,744,000 for the base bid and to execute related documents. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Mayor, members of council, Cindy Lynch, your municipal projects manager. This is very exciting for Public Works. As you read, we're requesting that council authorize the city manager to award the construction bid for the water supply and storage improvements project to RTA Construction in the amount of $6,744,000 so that we can build resiliency for the city of Yreka for water storage in the event that our main transmission at Fall Creek fails for some reason briefly. The project involves developing a new groundwater source by drilling a well at the Davis Well location at the Yreka Police Department on Davis Road, and constructing a new $1 million water tank near the current lower Humbug tank, as well as a new 0.2 million gallon water tank near the Shasta Bell tanks currently up on the hill. The city and Pace Engineering evaluated the low bidders, license status, bid bond. Insurance company confirmed that the bidder is responsible and the bid's responsive. The city attorney saw the bid documents at the time and concurred with the city staff and Pace Engineering that it's appropriate to award the construction contract. The physical impact is that the project is covered by a $9 million construction grant. It's fully expected to cover all the construction and the soft costs. However, if it did go over slightly, the costs would be funded by water reserves. And I am here if you have any questions.
Does the council have any questions of Ms. Lynch?
Do not.
Sorry, I'm just,
Thank you. At this time, I'll open it up for public comment. See no public comment. I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion. Does anybody have any discussion on this item they'd like to bring up?
No?
Okay. What are the wishes of the council?
Councilman
Would you
Middleton, I'll make the motion to adopt resolution 2025-31 of the City Council of the City of Yreka, authorizing the city manager to award a construction contract to RTA Construction Incorporated for the water supply and storage improvements project in the amount of $6,744,000 for the base bid and to execute the related documents.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Middleton, second by Councilmember Davis, to adopt resolution 2025-31 of the City Council of the City of Yreka, authorizing the city manager to award a construction contract to RTA Construction Incorporated for the water supply and storage improvements project in the amount of $6,744,000 for the base bid and to execute related documents. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
All those in favor of adopting resolution 2025-31, please signify by saying aye. Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember McCoy.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton. Councilmember Claire. Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you. 11B, this is the city attorney. It's discussion possible action regarding a motion to adopt a resolution 2025-32 concerning the purchase of assessor parcel numbers 061-163-010, 061-272-030, and 061-272-070 for $850,000 and authorizing acceptance of real property from Pacific Realty Associates. Mr. Jared.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is a
a resolution to authorize the purchase of these pieces of property. These pieces of property have been offered for sale and in negotiations for quite some time with city staff. The intended use of this is for a future fire hall. However, the exact location approval of the fire hall is not before you tonight. What is before you tonight is the purchase of this property. The fire hall aspect of this will be coming before you in a month or so to approve a design and environmental documents associated with that use. The purchase price for these parcels is $850,000. The seller has already agreed to all of these terms and is presenting an agreement before you for review by all parties. So this will finalize that agreement. It will be then put into escrow, and the property transaction will happen within the next 30 days or so. Please the report.
Thank you. Do the council members have any questions?
This
Mr.
Councilman
McCoy?
McCoy, no, I know that there's a caveat put in there by our city attorney. I want to make sure that our citizens out here and there's anybody might be listening in knows that our intended use is for a fire hall.
No questions.
Any other questions? All right, I'll open this up for public comment at this time. Seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion. Mr. McCoy? Mr. Middleton?
Nope.
Mr. Claire? Mr. Davis?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Well, what are the wishes of the council?
Council Middleton, I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution 2025-32 approving the purchase and sale agreement of joint escrow instructions concerning the purchase of assessors parcel numbers 061-163-010, 061-272-030, and 061-272-070 for $850,000 and authorizing acceptance of the real property from Pacific Realty Associates LP.
I'll second the motion. So I have a motion on the floor made by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Mayor Baker. It's a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-32 as recently described by Mr. Middleton. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
All those in favor of adopting resolution 2025-32, please signify by saying aye. Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember McCoy?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Claire?
Aye.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Item C is the Assistant City Manager and its discussion, possible action, adoption of the Siskiyou County Active Transportation Plan recommendations as the City of Yreka's Active Transportation Plan. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Katie Sullen and Phil Longnecker from Alta Planning and Design, who were part of the planning and design team for the Active Transportation Plan. They will be helping me with a presentation. So Cindy, if you could please pull up the PDF. Sorry, so. No, you're good. All good. All right, and there are hard copies of the slides if you're interested over here at the front. If you need anything, no. All right, and we are pulled up. So Katie and Phil, I'll let you guys take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you to present the Siskiyou County Active Transportation Plan, focusing on the city of Yreka elements. As Juliana said, I'm Katie Celine at Alta Planning and Design, and I'm a planner at Alta and was the project manager for this project. And I'm also joined this evening by my colleague, Phil Longnecker. Next slide, please. So our agenda for our about 15-minute presentation here, we'll give an overview of the plan, talk a little bit about how we put it together, and then spend most of our time talking through some Yreka specific key themes and priority projects, and then conclude with some implementation next steps. And then, of course, have time for any questions or discussion at the end. Next slide, please. So the vision and purpose of this plan is to create a Siskiyou County that's safe, healthy, and economically vibrant rural region that provides its residents and visitors with accessible and convenient transportation options that make it possible for everyone to get where they need to go. Next slide, please. The plan is very aligned with Yreka's general plan vision guiding principles. The projects that we've identified would contribute towards a safe, clean, healthy community. It would contribute towards exceptional recreation opportunities, healthy lifestyles, and the physical, emotional, social well-being. Next slide, please. Some of the basic facts of the project. We worked with all incorporated communities across the county, so very broad geography. We did have some recommendations and do some work as well in unincorporated Siskiyou County. And then we worked on the project from winter 2023 through spring 2025. And the project was funded by a grant from the state active transportation program. Next slide, please. And so combining, we looked at a lot of safety data. I won't go into too much tonight, but in the full plan, there's a lot of different pieces of data that we looked at, a lot of community feedback, work with local staff, and we identified these key issues and needs that we sought to address through the recommendations and projects that are in the plan. So we identified the need to address safety issues on highways and main streets, particularly crossings. And specifically, you can see the graphic on the right here. We know that drivers who hit people walking and biking in Siskiyou County between 2017 and 2022 caused 10 deaths and left 60 people injured. And we do know that 2 of those fatalities were in Yreka during that time. So that really is the biggest problem that we're trying to solve here. We're trying to reduce the number of people who are injured and killed on our roads. Unfortunate reality. We're also looking to align and coordinate with Caltrans projects. We're looking to identify recreation opportunities, future trails, paths, rail trail opportunities, improve connectivity to schools, downtowns, natural areas, and other destinations, and accessibility for people of all ages and abilities. Next slide, please. So next, I'll talk a little bit about our community engagement. Next slide. We conducted a lot of events and activities throughout the project to make sure that we heard from as many people as possible. We wanted to connect with residents across the county, trying to learn where people had transportation issues, where they were trying to cross the road that they couldn't, where they wanted to be able to bike to, but they didn't feel safe. And to do that, we had 3 open houses. We went to a lot of existing events. You can kind of see some of the photos here on the slide. We worked with the county Office of Education on some Safe Routes to School events. A lot of walk audits, visiting each community, walking around, getting the lay of the land, working with the staff at the city. And then we had a survey and interactive map that was the kind of like quick and easy way that people could reach us and tell us what they needed for active transportation. Next slide, please. Then in Yreka, we had an open house at the Transit Center in April 2024. And then we also visited Yreka Golden City Days. We partnered with Siskiyou Outdoor Recreation Alliance to kind of be the boots on the ground, working with us to do some of the outreach for this project. We also had a pretty robust response to the online survey and interactive map from Yreka. I think we had the most responses from Yreka. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it to Phil to talk about some of the key active transportation issues in Yreka.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. My name is Phil. For everyone listening, thanks again for your time. I am a planner at Alta and supported Katie on this project. All right, next slide. So the next couple of slides, I'd like to go into some of the key issues and themes that we identified as part of this project. We did this for every incorporated city that we worked with, and hopefully it lets you see the basis for some of the recommendations that are in the plan. And hopefully these themes and issues related to walking and biking resonate with you as we go through them. So the first off, crossings, that was a major theme in this active transportation plan. Particularly in Yreka, we received a lot of feedback on Highway 3. That is, according to the data, the location with the most fatal collisions and injuries. We obviously know that there's a lot of recent construction work happening and has already occurred there, but the plan also identifies some ways to keep improving. Safe routes to schools is another major area that the plan touches on. This was something that came up in our conversations with folks around the county, as well as in Yreka. And the folks we talked to noted that Oregon Street and Gold Street are major routes for everyone in the community, but especially for students walking and biking to school. Next slide. Other key themes, downtown is obviously a major driver of walking and biking trips. It's a major destination. And this plan just acknowledges that balancing traffic operations with placemaking amenities is a balance. ADA compliance, this is an issue that every city deals with, and it essentially relates to the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is making sure that sidewalks are clear, they have curb ramps for wheelchairs and other mobility devices can get around. Access to Greenhorn Park. This came up quite a bit in our discussions with folks. It's a major destination for people looking to recreate, but getting there can be uncomfortable or difficult to navigate. Next slide. And lastly, the Yreka Creek Greenway. And this plan recognizes that it's an asset for the community. A number of folks talked about how it could be expanded. Particularly, we received a lot of comments thinking about how it might connect to Montague. And we also recognize that challenges with safety and management remain. And then finally, bike parking. It's a small investment, the big impact that really helps enable schools, parks, and trips downtown. Okay, next slide. So the next couple of slides, we're going to go through the recommendations in the plan that are informed by the key themes and issues that we identified. Next slide. And there are two big buckets of recommendations that the plan addresses. There are corridor improvements, so think things that are like sidewalks and bike paths. They are in the world in a linear fashion, and then spot improvements, so targeted improvements at specific locations. Think like lighting or crosswalk improvements. So this whole plan, you can find improvements like the pictures you see on the right here, crosswalks, RFBs, curb extensions, sidewalks, curb ramps, and trail recommendations and things like that. And then I guess there's also sections on non-infrastructure recommendations as well, which are more programmatic recommendations. Okay, next slide. So we spent some time thinking about how to prioritize the recommendations in the plan. And to do that, we had an approach that factored in the following factors, thinking about connectivity, safety, whether or not a project was located in a low income area, how much it would be able to contribute to economic development, i.e. is it related to a downtown of a city? And then obviously we factored in public input and cost as well. So on the next slide, I think we'll start going into the high priority locations in Yreka. And yeah, they're here on the map. And then in the next couple of slides, we'll go into them in more detail. So some of the high priority project recommendations that we have, starting with just the crosswalks, we think these 3 locations are really great starting points for enhancing crossings. Oregon Street and Jackson Street, it's right next to a school. Same with Siskiyou Street and Knapp Street. And then Oregon Street and Greenhorn Road are all prime locations to pursue first. Next slide. And then for the corridor high priority project recommendations, we really see Greenhorn Road being so close to the park as an area that would have a lot of benefit for investments. And then, so yeah, for this particular corridor, we were recommending bike lanes on Greenhorn Road between Oregon Street and Greenhorn Park, and then also considering a sidewalk on the south side of Greenhorn Road. Yeah, and then another high priority recommendation or high priority location for active transportation, we see Oregon Street between the high school and 4-H Way as being a really prime location for investments as well. Next slide. So all of the recommendations in the plan add up into a larger network of recommendations. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about how the recommendations would address people's ability to access schools, parks, and businesses. And so you can see here in the map that this is the recommended network for bicycle facilities. And there's another map in the plan that goes into more detail as for the spot recommendations, but that's not shown here. And again, all of these recommendations build on past planning efforts. So we took a lot of cues from the Yreka Bicycle Transportation Plan from 2006. And yeah, you can read more about the projects listed in the plan at this link. Next slide.
All right, we'll wrap things up here with a little bit about implementation and funding. Next slide, please. So this first slide here helps show how we're going to align this plan with other planning efforts and kind of administrative next steps. The county is looking to adopt the ATP as the ATP element of their general plan, and then also looking to each city to adopt the plan as well as you're considering this evening. And then looking longer term, additional kind of planning opportunities at the county level, potential parks and trails master plan. There were kind of some areas in that realm that we weren't able to fully explore with this project. And then locally in Yreka, there was talk about potentially updating the Greenway master plan in the future. Next slide, please. Then some other ways that this plan can be useful, start to try to get some of these projects built. In the short term, looking at submitting grant applications for high priority projects. Of course, we know a lot of these are very costly, and adopting the plan is a great first step. That's definitely one of the kind of eligibility factors for some of the big grants. Looking at some kind of wonky specific funding opportunities, there's ways to pool some of the allotted funds that come to the county from the state to potentially construct bigger projects and kind of pool some of those funds in different ways across jurisdictions. Ongoing coordination with Caltrans, that's definitely one of the biggest opportunities to get stuff done. They're kind of working through doing improvements on their roads, kind of rotating across the county. And that's often the big opportunity to get some of these crossings and changes implemented. So like keeping close track of what they're doing and making sure they know about the plan. They've seen everything in here and are a party to this as well. Then some kind of evaluation, progress tracking, next steps, and then a lot of opportunity related to partnerships and safe routes to school. There's some fun momentum with the Office of Education, kind of has a new safe routes to school program that they've been working on. And then looking long term, we have been thinking about how to institutionalize these projects and build into operations and maintenance steps so that this doesn't just sit on a shelf and it's something that when someone goes to do a project on one of these corridors, there's prompts and there's structures in place where when you go to like fill out a form to request funding, you have to sort of check a box that you've reviewed the plan and some ideas along those lines. And next slide, please. And with that, we'll conclude our presentation. Thank you again. It's been a real honor to be involved with this important project, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie and Phil. And just to kind of add to the discussion, so as Katie kind of talked about, this plan was originally developed for the county. We actively participated as staff members as well as trying to push a lot of the outreach within the city of Yreka in anticipation to adopt this as an option for the city council. Obviously, we've talked about doing a parks master planning document where a lot of this could get absorbed into. We've also talked about doing a new roadway master planning document that this would get absorbed into in the eventuality. And so this gives us a nice placeholder until we can get some more specific documentation for the city. And essentially adopting this ATP tonight would also meet 3 programs within your existing general plan, which is to support comprehensive bicycle routes throughout Siskiyou County and Yreka, supporting bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and then ensuring trail system provides connectivity to schools, shopping, housing, and employment centers. And so this covers a number of different goals that the city council had and the city council has. And so we did make sure to include those guiding principles of your upcoming general plan update that you've adopted. Just trying to move forward with a couple of options in the interim until we finalize the general plan circulation element that would dive deeper into these types of issues and add projects to this. So we understand that this list is maybe not comprehensive to everything that we want to do at this moment, but it does cover a lot of the major complaints that we get. Primarily, 2 intersections that usually get brought up to us are Oregon and Bruce Street and Oregon and Minor Street. And especially with the now purchase of the Shop Smart property with the potential of moving the fire hall over there, that's one of the things that kind of interconnects with some of these ATP items. So it is all interconnected. We're also developing your first capital improvements program that would essentially line out these projects where you would prioritize them further as a city council for funding. We would also consider this plan when we get any road funding through the local transportation commission. One of the things that some of the council members here may remember is when we were talking about pedestrian, cycling, other types of improvement to Highway 3, Caltrans was a little apprehensive to just add those types of features as is. And one of the reasons is you didn't have a plan, you didn't have a standard. And so having this in place gives you more power to be able to go into some of these state projects or larger projects to go, no, actually, we're going to be putting this type of infrastructure here for pedestrians and cyclists. Another good project to really note is Knapp Street is an obnoxiously wide street where people do speed on many occasions. It does need to be redone in the coming future. And so when we go for those LTC dollars, we now have a potential other pot of funds through the ATP program, Safe Routes to School, that we can make that project even better. We can put in better types of curbs, gutter, sidewalks. We can put in better crosswalks. We can trial a couple of different cool investments that are not nearly as expensive as, say, putting in some of that infrastructure. There's a lot of cool recommendations that are kind of more lower costs that we can do in the interim as well to trial some of these. For example, on this fun little intersection over here by Jackson and Gold Street over by the SCOE office, I believe there's like 6 streets that converge at that point, and there's a recommendation to trial some kind of painting to have a kind of a makeshift curb cutout. One of the things we've been implementing piecemeal throughout the city are some of these pieces for better pedestrian safety. Minor Street is one of them. When we went to go restripe Minor Street, if you'll remember, we actually took those lanes and made them as narrow as possible within the NACDOW code, which is the North American Transit Commission Officials Book or something like that. I'm really close, but not quite there for that acronym. But essentially we did see a noticeable difference in people slowing down just from doing the paint, which is something that we pretty much do every year or every other year for that street. So there's a lot of recommendations in here that aren't very high cost, but having that direction to staff gives us the ability to implement some of these smaller items before we can do the larger infrastructure. And then again, as Katie mentioned, and Phil may have mentioned as well, adopting this type of plan makes you eligible for several other pots of monies at Caltrans. District 2 is typically very underfunded when it comes to safe routes to school and active transportation, just because they don't have a lot of applicants. Susanville tends to take a lot of the pool because they've had an active transportation plan. They've had a lot of investment in that. And I think it's about time that we start to step up and be able to be eligible for those funds. And especially with the tax coming off of gas is getting lower and lower for us to do any road projects. Typically, these types of projects get nixed out of these LTC projects first, right? We're really looking at those repaving projects. And so some of the initial programs we're looking at from this pot is returning to having the bike lanes restored to Oregon Street, where we just did the resurfacing project. We did not invest in the thermoplastic for that because we didn't have funding for it within that.
Just a couple of questions. Last week, you and I and the Public Works Director and the city manager had a discussion about placements of stop signs in Yreka. And I was wondering if you could just give us a real quick summary of that discussion regarding traffic studies.
Yeah. So when you are changing the flow of traffic of an automotive vehicle in California, you are required by Caltrans to prepare different traffic analyses that make findings. It does traffic counts. A really good example of one of those is the Payne Lane project that is preparing some documentation through CEQA. They were required to do that type of traffic analysis. And so it's not as easy as putting a sign up. We have to study that, and it has to be done by a qualified engineer. And so that takes quite a bit of time and money to do that study. And I understand that for people not within the profession, like just put up a sign. But we have to study the impact of what that sign does. So you're going to have people slow down. You're going to have people start to stack and queue. And so we have to have someone take a look at that to be able to implement some of those developments. And so when we do some of our larger scale interventions through like an ATP plan or something for pedestrians, and so we'll take the Oregon Street and Minor Street, for example. We would have to conduct one of those for the larger scale changes in flow of traffic, but for some of these smaller items, we don't necessarily have to do that because what it's doing is it's increasing awareness, it's increasing safety of existing infrastructure. But yeah, that's the very short answer. And just while we're on the topic of minor in Oregon, one of the reasons we can't put in a four-way stop is because we cannot have queuing of vehicles in front of the fire hall building in case they have to get out for an emergency. So a lot of that goes into that traffic analysis prepared by a traffic engineer. So those are much higher ticket items, but there are other interventions that we can do outside of those that could achieve the same result.
Thank you so much. Okay, if there's no other questions from the council, I'll open it up to public comment at this time.
Luis Gliado, Yreka. I was looking at this handout that you gave us, and in there, I circled because it said investing in important improvements such as sidewalks. And I know that I mentioned this before, but would these grants improve our sidewalks? Because actually you're taking your life in your hands when you're walking down Minor Street and Broadway and some of the streets on here where the businesses are. I continually have to watch and look where I'm walking. They're very hazardous. I would like to see that as a priority, more so than the roads, because a lot of us citizens, if you look here in the audience right now, most of us probably aren't going to be on a bicycle. And most of us are going to be walking and parking our cars and walking somewhere. So I'd really like to see that happen. Also, they mentioned a fatality that they had, and I was wondering what was involved in that fatality, because my concern is they want to reduce the amount of deaths in our city. I don't know if some of you are aware that there's a project called the Needle Exchange Project. And my concern is that they move throughout the Siskiyou County, and they have like a little van that's through the public health department. They have a grant, and what they do is this van shows up and people that are using IV drugs are showing up. So they're getting in their cars and driving there to have clean needles. And so to me, that should be looked at, because we've got people on the streets that are in IV drugs, and how do you know what their capacity is for driving? I think that's dangerous. Also, the fact that we're even considering having a storage place for dispensaries. Again, we're having people going there and picking up drugs, and they're on drugs and they're driving. So how did they get there? Did somebody drive them? Did they go on a bus, etc.? So these are my concerns. This is what jumped out to me when I was listening to this. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion on the recommended action, which is to adopt resolution 2025-33 of the City Council of the City of Yreka, adopting the Siskiyou County Active Transportation Plan as the City of Yreka Active Transportation Plan. Mr. Davis.
Basically, the reason that we're talking about getting involved in this active transportation plan is to increase our ability to get grants to do the improvements that we've talked about. Oh, look, here comes the answer.
So that is one of the reasons, but mainly what it does is it also Appendix E of the plan outlines a number of project recommendations based off of public outreach and input, based off of Alta's assessment of our network with all of the deaths and pedestrian injuries. So it's based off of data, it's based off of public outreach for priority projects as well. And so it gives you that nice project list at the end of it. It also identifies in the map where future projects could be used. So this also helps us update other plans and ensures that we put in infrastructure for pedestrian and cyclists. And again, those who are need additional accommodation as well through ADA. So it prioritizes those projects as well. And there are a couple of recommendations also for programs. And a lot of the programs related to active transportation are ones that are supported by the schools. And so that's a lot of the programming as well. So you would be adopting this preliminary list of projects that you can add to and take away over time as well.
You talked about a project by the school.
Mhm.
Can you kind of just give me an example? Give me an example, please.
So, for example, one of the pieces that Katie and Phil had kind of mapped out is doing some improvements to this intersection right here on Oregon and Jackson Street, since it's heavily traveled by school kids. And I don't know, Phil, if you want to unmute and maybe talk about what type of treatments would be recommended for that type of project, to just give Councilmember Davis an idea of the types of projects that would be supported.
Yeah, I think at that specific location at Oregon and Jackson Street, we'd be recommending something like a curb extension. So these are, they're also known as bulb outs, and it's where you reconstruct the curb so that the crossing distance is shorter. And the reason we do this is to reduce the amount of exposure for pedestrians in the lane from vehicles.
One of the things a bulb out would do at those corners as well is the child would then walk to the edge of the curb. So it's a full curb, and then they're in front of any parked cars that may be there or waiting to pick up other kids. So it gives more visibility for kids at the crosswalk. And it helps increase that awareness for drivers of children who are crossing at that intersection. And so that's one example of the type of projects supported in this plan.
Thank you.
Mr. McCoy? Mr. Middleton?
No.
Mr. Claire? So, you gave us, a handout of a list of projects, and these are specifically for the city of Yreka?
Correct.
Okay. And, we hear a lot about Minor Street.
Yeah.
And specifically, Minor and Oregon. And thank you for addressing the reason why at this point in time, a four-way stop would not be possible because of the location of the fire department, or at least I'm putting that into my own words.
No, you're correct.
But I also would love to see the speed limit on Minor Street slowed way down. And so I don't know what it would take or if it's even appropriate at this point in time, but I would like to see that added to this list is just a slowdown of the speed limit, maybe to 15 miles an hour from Main Street up to Minor Street Park, which I believe is Gold Street. So I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, 2 points on that. So we do actually have an additional project in there to study the downtown Minor Street, Broadway Street area, generally speaking. There have been public comments related to turning Minor Street into a pedestrian mall. There's been a discussion of turning it into a one-way. And so we did add the project in there to do an analysis of the downtown as a whole to improve overall circulation of pedestrians, cyclists, transit, and individual motored vehicles. The second point of your comment is that the state of California has two new kind of state statute sections on slow streets, which essentially, when we were doing the speed limit setting, there was a really kind of rigid recommendation from requirement from Caltrans that we had to meet certain findings, do speed studies. There is now the Slow Streets program, which is another program that we can look into. And Katie and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there is a reference into investigating the Slow Streets program in the city of Yreka. I don't think it specifically calls out those particular streets, but I think it would behoove us to move forward with looking at a Slow Streets program and taking a look at where that would be appropriate, maybe not even just in the downtown area, but there could be other areas of town where they could benefit from a reduction from 25 to 15, or even 45 to 35 or whatever that looks like. But there are some new regulations that allow us to do speed reduction much easier than previously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, What are the wishes of the council? All right. Well, I'll make the recommended motion, which is to adopt resolution 2025-33 of the City Council of the City of Yreka adopting the Siskiyou County Active Transportation Plan as the City of Yreka Active Transportation Plan.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Baker, second by Councilmember Claire to adopt this resolution 2025-33. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Good evening. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2025-33, please signify by saying aye. Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember McCoy.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton. Councilmember Claire. Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
All right. Item D is our planning manager. It's discussion possible action on the future of the Planning Commission. Welcome.
Good evening, council members. This is Yreka Lesra, your planning manager. This item is a discussion and possible direction on the future of Planning Commission. So the purpose of this time is to provide an opportunity for the City Council to discuss and provide direction on the future of the Planning Commission. There are two options before you tonight. The first one being to dissolve the Planning Commission. In that instance, all planning items would come to the City Council. The second option would be to keep the Planning Commission, recruit more planning commissioners, and work to improve it. A bit of background for you, the Planning Commission is meant to review land use issues, zoning, and development applications before they go to the City Council. However, the commission is not currently functioning as intended, as we only have 2 out of 5 commissioners at the moment. Out of those 2, one of their terms ends after this month, so we will have 1 commissioner. Because of this, the group has not been able to meet quorum and has not been able to hold regular meetings. As a result, all planning items, as you know, have been coming to the City Council. Staff began noticing the 3 vacant seats that we have back in April of this year, but have had difficulty finding volunteers to serve as planning commissioners. The discussion tonight is intended for staff and council members to discuss options for the future of the Planning Commission. Option 1, to dissolve the Planning Commission and transfer commission duties to the City Council. This would speed up decision-making, reduce staff time spent taking items to both the Planning Commission and the City Council, and would avoid delays caused by lack of quorum. However, it would increase the City Council's workload by having to review planning items that would normally go to the Commission. If the council chooses option 1 to get rid of the Planning Commission, staff would need to update the municipal code, and all planning items would go directly to City Council from here on out. The second option is to keep the Planning Commission and maintain the current status quo. This allows for public involvement in land use decisions and decreases the council's workload in having to review planning projects. Staff have had to cancel several meetings since January of this year, as there have been minimal items to bring to the Planning Commission. The commission has had trouble meeting quorum, and we have had trouble recruiting new commissioners. If the council chooses to keep the Planning Commission, staff would work on recruiting new commissioners and consider changes to the way the commission operates. The recommendation before you tonight is give your staff direction on whether to dissolve the Planning Commission or keep the Planning Commission and incorporate any changes. It would be the staff's preference to keep the planning commission. However, staff would prefer to have a buffer year to work on some outreach and education to get the word out to members of the community, to recruit more planning commissioners to the position, creates more trainings for planning commissioners after that year. And yeah, it would give us time to really bring the planning commission back online. And so I will open the floor for discussion now.
Okay, so we'll start out with, do the council members have any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah, Mr. Jared?
if I could just clarify one legal aspect here. Your planning commission does a required job under state law and under your city code to review and particularly legislative acts relating to zoning, and then forward their ideas about that on to you. There are several other areas where both by state law and your municipal code, the planning commission has been delegated as the body to take that public comment, provide a place for forum, to use their expertise, and then provide you advice. So their planning commissions perform a very integral role. That isn't to say that cities have to have them. The state law also says if you're, you can act as a city council as a planning commission, and that's one of the options here. The buffer year aspect, it's not really dealt with in the staff report. Internally, staff and I have talked about this, how that would work. That would require a code amendment. It'd be a very minor code amendment, basically saying that until such time there is a quorum of planning commissioners, 3 planning commissioners actually appointed and qualified, they would, until that happens, so if there's only 2 or 1, until that time, you effectively would act as the planning commission. And so that would then protect you from criticism and potential challenges relating to going through the proper planning process. And so I support staff's recommendation. My recommendation to tag on to that is that there be, if you're going to go the route of keeping the planning commission, that we amend the city code to so that there is this kind of buffer, this backstop, that when there are insufficient number of planning commissioners currently in office, that you effectively act as the planning commission. That would mean appeals would effectively, there wouldn't be appeals. It would be you that would act as the planning commission. Next stop would then be Superior Court in the appellate process.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, I appreciate the attorney's remarks. I appreciate Alia's remarks. I think it behooves us to table this because I would have liked to have had the attorney's remarks in writing. I would have liked to have it in this packet, not be hearing it tonight. I'd also like for Alia to have heard it and been able to acknowledge them in her packet. So at this point in time, I was prepared to vote for it. You know that as well as I do, but I'm not prepared to vote for it when I get 12th hour judgments from the attorney. That's his job, is to make sure that we are in the know prior to the meeting. The same thing is, I'm not big on looking to have him put another code on his desk to redo, because we're still waiting on codes and things we've asked him to do for anywhere from 3 or 4 or 5 months up to almost 2 years now. So I would ask that it be tabled and that we have our city attorney prepare a statement on it. We pay him for that. He meet again with Alia and Juliana and the city manager, and that we then bring it back to us at the next meeting.
Thank you. So should we, Mr. Jared, would you give me a recommendation as how to proceed on Mr. McCoy's request at this time? whether to receive other comments, questions from the council, and then take action on his request after public comment? Or can you give me some direction, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty important that you act on this. And what staff has asked you to do is to provide direction. What I've done is added a little bit more to support staff's recommendation to keep planning commission as is, but what it would take to keep it as is and still keep you a legally compliant city council. The code amendment aspect of it, it's a very minor code amendment. The language has already pretty much been drafted and sent to staff. The decision was made not to overwhelm you and put effectively a first reading before you tonight, but instead get your input on this. And so tabling it effectively would essentially be, I mean, taking, I think what Councilmember McCoy is recommending is to get that analysis further in writing and understand what it is that I've just said, but get it in writing. Effectively, that's what could be done, not just simply tabling it for further discussion, but giving the direction to provide that additional information and have a first reading on a very, very minor amendment.
So would it be appropriate to take comments from the other council members at this point also?
Yes, and the
Okay.
public.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, Mr. Middleton, do you have any comments, questions?
Well, as I sit here, would be, I'm conflicted because I would say right now I think it would be, for me, I would like to see it dissolved because we've had struggles. We've had people who have waited tabled because they weren't able to get issues resolved. We've had a hard time getting applicants. So that's why I'm saying now, if we were to keep it, there would have to be significant changes. I was like, do they need to meet every month? Can it be every 3 months? I don't know, what's the qualifications when they fill out the application? So we're not just hurrying to say, oh, we need to form somebody and get a body really fast just because we need to save it. So that would be, so I kind of agree that we need to bring it back for a first reading because I would like to see what are those changes going to be if we decide to keep it. If I was to sit here today and make that decision, if we had to make a decision, I'd be saying, let's get rid of it and just add the couple of projects or 3 projects that come a year or 2 that have come last year. They barely met. And so, I guess the question, Alia, do they meet every month, 2 months?
Yes, the regularly scheduled meetings are the third Wednesday of every month. We've had 2 commission meetings since January.
Wow. So I don't know. I guess right now I wouldn't make a decision. I'm kind of torn, but if we were going to keep it, significant changes like 3 months would probably be okay. And then if we, I guess, yeah, if we decide to keep, yeah, if we decide to keep them, just significant changes of to the policy and what we expect and how often they're going to meet, just to restructure it because it probably hasn't been done in a long time. And then if we don't get anybody, if we keep struggling on finding anybody, if we do have that buffer to say we're going to be the acting board for a little bit, then that's fine with me. But I'm not ready to make a decision right now. I'd say exit, but I would like to see what those changes would be if we could try to save it.
Okay. And one of the changes that I'm hearing that you are recommending is the meeting schedule.
Maybe like every 3 months.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Davis?
You know, I would be fine having the council assume the role as planning commission. However, I would prefer to maintain the planning commission mostly because they would be a good buffer for the council. So if we get something that is necessary, our attention, we've already had it looked at and the facts are out on paper already. So that's kind of the way I feel about it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Claire?
I'm for keeping it. I also like the buffer idea. Kind of gives us an idea of how much time we have. I'm not familiar with a lot of planning commission details, but I know that, like you're saying, meeting frequencies is important. I think it'd be important for us to keep it available, keep it open, and let's see what we can generate. Education for the public. Perhaps maybe people don't understand exactly what it entails. And maybe that's why we're not getting more people involved, exactly know what is needed and what isn't needed. And I think if we hit the wall, which we're still not filling the spots adequately, then we would address maybe taking it over as a council. But if I was sitting here to decide right now, I'd go with keeping it and doing the buffer idea, which everybody spoke of, and discussing changes to help implement more people being involved.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. Can you describe for us what the current recruitment process consists of?
So the current recruitment process, the city clerk has posted the available positions publicly, and I believe that there's an application that residents can submit to the city clerk, and then staff set up an interview with the applicant. I'm not sure exactly who's present at that interview. Some of the city council members might know that process better than I do because I haven't been through it. And then I believe a decision is made. I would ask Juliana to speak more to the process. Who is it a vote on who becomes a planning commissioner?
So for the planning commissioners, if you'll remember, we have kind of improved some of the questions that get filled out ahead of time, and then those are provided to you as a city council, and you do the interview here within your open session. That's kind of a change in process from how the city council was previously doing it, which was the mayor was just choosing individuals and bringing them forward. This is a more interactive process. So the way that the municipal code reads is that they are appointed by the mayor, but we were doing it as a council action confirming the appointments. And so those usually, the interviews usually happen in front of the city council, and you make the decision as a whole on who is appointed to that group.
So thank you. Getting back to the actual recruitment process, you mentioned that the city clerk does a posting. I'm assuming that that's also advertised in any of the local newspapers that are available. Do those include, well, let me put it this way. I am for maintaining the planning commission. I think that it's important that we have that process for land use issues before they come before the city council, because it does give the opportunity for the public to be more engaged in the process. For me, that's important. I would like to see some possible changes in the recruitment process that just include a little bit more information for those that are applying with regard to like the time commitment. Is there currently any ongoing training for planning commissioners. And by that, I mean, typically, city council, we have the opportunity to go to different trainings when we're first elected and then throughout our terms when we're serving in office. I'm just wondering if there's like a planning commission academy that we could send people to. I would hate for us to spend a lot of time developing a real comprehensive in-house training program. Excuse me, if there's something that's available through the state. I also would like to see us offer $100 stipend for each meeting that's attended. Because it's my understanding now that there is no stipend that's offered, right?
That's correct.
All right. So those are just my comments, my desires. So anybody have anything to add before I open it up for public comment?
That $100 stipend, we would get it if we were the planning commission in addition to our stipend. I'm for us.
All right. So at this time, I will open it up for public comment.
Thanks, Aaliyah.
Lorenzo Love. The public is already pretty suspicious of the city and how they do business. If you follow Facebook at all, you'll know that. If you get rid of the citizen oversight of the Planning Commission, you're going to deepen that suspicion of backdoor deals. The reason you don't have any applicants is because the city hasn't asked for any applicants. I follow city affairs pretty closely, and I have never seen an application for planning commission. There's nothing. It might be buried somewhere in the city website, but you haven't published it anywhere. Where is it published? It's not on your Facebook page. I haven't seen it anyplace else. Don't say it's on the newspaper. Nobody gets the newspaper. That's pointless. You want applications? Here, right here. All you got to do is ask. You'll get people. But if you don't ask, well, obviously you don't want people because you don't ask.
Luis Gliado, Yreka. And it really scares me because I'm agreeing with Mr. Love. I agree with him that we should not dissolve the Planning Commission. I think it's really important for citizens to be involved. It makes citizens feel like everything is on the up and up. And I agree that that people didn't hear that there were applications. I heard from one of the city council members that they were looking for applicants, but I didn't see anything online. And I go online a lot and I'm involved, and so is Mr. Love, and so is his wife. They're involved. So we go on the city web page and your Facebook page, but most people don't. So where you need to advertise is where the citizens go and look for information. One of the ways that you could do that, now she said that they did an outreach. She didn't mention, Anya didn't mention what kind of outreach they did, but I would suggest you put it in the water bill. When you send out for the water bill, most everybody gets a water bill unless maybe you're a renter and your landlord pays for the water bill. And then I suggest you go to some of the Facebook pages that the citizens go to all the time, because that's how we get our information now. We have no newspaper. unless you're on somebody's email list, you don't know what's going on. You might get you get an email from the clerks to let you know what's on the agenda, but that's one way. You've got to reach out to where the citizens get their information, and it's on Facebook. And it's on the Grapevine and some of these other ones. And I think that's where you need to put it. And I like the idea of a training because a lot of people don't understand what the Planning Commission does. It maybe might not be so threatening and they might want to apply. I highly urge you to keep the Planning Commission. I think it's really important. And again, I agree with Mr. Love. I think he made some really good points. Thank you.
Mariachi. Um, I never, ever would have resigned from a planning commission. It was something I absolutely loved. I had the most respect, utmost respect for it, for this institution. Absolutely loved it. And I have been begging for you guys to put people on the planning commission when Amy Fernandez quit and then Peter O'Brien quit. I knew we only had 3 people. I kept begging. Nobody wanted to do that. You guys were so busy with the mayorship, you couldn't pay attention to what was going on in your city. I resigned because the day I walked in here and was told that Brian Devlin was the chair and we didn't have a choice about that. We didn't get to vote on that, which is against the law. I can't work for someone who's breaking the law. So I resigned. That is why. I also find it very poor of all of you. None of you asked why I resigned. None of you cared. You're that disconnected from what is going on under your own roof. Well done. Do not get rid of the Planning Commission, please.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. And Mr. McCoy has requested that this come back to include the comments, a written summary of proposed changes from the attorney. Is that?
Back to the legal comments, the attorney says if we do it, if we don't.
Okay.
Rather than tell us that the small town sitting here waiting to make them.
Okay.
I sat on commission for 7 years. I'm not gonna go into a lot of things tonight, just act it. But I'm not gonna go into people are not individually, that's fine. As far as interviews go, as far as people sitting, we've always had 7 members up until a short time ago. And we downsized to 5. We've always been able to find them. The council is responsible for getting out there. If this is on the 5 of us. It's responsible, we're responsible for getting the word out too. So I'm relieved with that. But yes, thank you for asking me again. And yes, I think if we're going to hear something, rather than our attorney spring on us tonight, let's get it so we have a week in advance or 4 days in advance so we can look at it.
Okay.
That's we paid.
What do you?
So this item was not put on as an action item. It was just a discussion only. So
Consensus is what you want. I apologize. Consensus is what you want.
well, I think that Mr. McCoy has a really good point. He would like to see it brought back to us with the attorney's comments. And then we will continue this discussion at that point in time. Is that fair statement to make?
Fine with me.
Okay.
So for clarity, all you want to come back is this same item with what I said before? Or do you want the recommendation, the verbiage that I'm recommending as well, which would effectively be pre-hearing a first reading?
Madam Mayor, I would like the verbiage to come forward as well, but that comes from the city manager, doesn't come from the city attorney. We don't, he works for the five of us. John works for the five of us. He can report to us in the nuances of what he sees as, yeah, in his opinion, because remember, with attorneys, it's always opinion until you go to court, till you're sued. What he sees if we go one way, what he sees if we go the other. But John is the one that makes he makes the recommendation to us with his staff. So, I mean, I don't see anything, I do see things on here sometimes for the city attorney. The city attorney doesn't dictate our agenda, doesn't put things on our agenda. You and James dictate our agenda. John dictates it, and whoever else sits in on the agenda review.
Mr. Elsnap, do you have enough direction to bring this back?
I think I do, but for clarity, you want as Mr. Jared stated, you want the same report to come back, but with more explanation on option 1 or option 2, preferably option 2 with the comments Mr. Jared made. Is that, and we would bring it back for further discussion?
That satisfies me.
Yeah, it's not preferably option 1 or option 2. We need to see option 1. We need to see option 2. What he said tonight to us, what the attorney said, we need that in writing.
Okay.
Concerning both options.
I'm clear. That's clear.
I mean, I think it's without having that in front of us, I think we're flying blind.
Okay.
All right, so we won't be bringing back an ordinance. This will be kicked down the road. The next meeting, it'll be another discussion like this. And at that point, you would then give direction on which ordinance you want drafted. Because right now you need an ordinance. Right now we're in some gray area.
Okay.
Now, maybe you should have brought that to us earlier, sir.
It's not mine to bring. This was a staff item.
Then you needed to not say anything tonight. I am going to interrupt him. You needed to then just keep your mouth shut tonight, sir, if it's a staff item. So don't try and pass the buck to the staff. When you're the one that is supposed to be prepping us, 5 members as a council, please don't pass that buck to other people. That's disingenuous, sir.
I don't see my job is to do that. My job is, as the item is brought to you, to clarify. This item was not my item. This item was brought as a bare bones asking your direction. I suppose next time I will be more forceful in adding to agenda items. If that's what the criticism is here, I certainly will then review every one of their staff items and add my, I guess, commentary on them, if that's what you're asking for. This seems pretty straightforward. The comment I was making was very simple, that you need a code amendment. Either way you go, keep it or lose it. The current status quo, however, of having a planning commission that that has insufficient numbers is not sustainable. We're having to work through this right now this week and putting items on the current planning agenda. Is that for tomorrow night? Putting the notice on there that it's a mea culpa. The city does not have a sufficient number for even quorum. So we're still having a meeting. There's going to be discussion, and it's going to be on this next items before you is the cannabis situation. And so that's on the agenda, but there really is no meeting under the Brown Act. It's a public gathering, I guess is what we would call it. And there will be a discussion of events by the public. Staff will then present, but it's not going to be a planning commission consideration. Point being, you should be taking action on a code amendment in the future. Either keep it or amend it to make it more clear. And so what my comment tonight was to bolster staff's position, which is to keep it, which it sounds like there's consensus to keep it. But to advance that and to let you know what that would mean, a very simple code amendment, literally 3 or 4 sentences. But if it sounds like what you want is my commentary that I said earlier, just attached to a staff report, and we'll have this discussion, the same discussion next meeting. We can do that.
Thank you. Mr. Elsniak, got it? Okay, thank you. Okay. So, thank you, everybody, for your input on that. The next agenda item is agenda item E, the Assistant City Manager. It is an introduction of the proposed cannabis ordinance update. And this is this evening, a discussion item only. No action is requested.
Correct. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. So I'm going to clarify 2 pieces before we get into the staff report. First is the impetus of these changes is not the grant that is mentioned in the staff report. The grant is not requiring you to make changes. The changes are required because the state law changed. So the state law, so that's Senate Bill, I believe it's 1186, requires all jurisdictions, I should say, to allow what's called non-retail storefront medicinal delivery within the state of California. So those that Senate bill took effect January 1st of this year. So there are state law changes that are in conflict with our local municipal code. So that is a first clarification. So the impetus, so these changes need to happen in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the state minimum standard, which we can discuss in a little bit, or something above that standard. So that's a first clarification. Second, the grant that was obtained to do this work is essentially one of the things that we complain about a lot, where the state of California requires us to do something, but then doesn't give us money to do it. And so this grant that was applied for previously is money to pay for my time, your city attorney's time to do the necessary code updates to become state compliant. So I don't want to conflate those 2 things. I just wanted to clarify those before we go into the staff report. The grant is not requiring you to make these changes. The state law is. The grant does have a deadline of adopting changes that meet the new state codes by the end of October. So we are giving multiple meetings on that. So just to clarify those 2 items. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for taking some time today. So the proposed changes for your municipal code includes 3 different chapters. So Title 5, which is concerned with business regulations, Title 9, which is health and safety related, and Title 16, which is your zoning code, are the 3 titles we'll be talking about today. So the ordinance itself is quite extensive, and we'll kind of go into the bits and pieces of that. But how we got here today is we did obtain a grant to do this work, to come up to code with the state requirements. And part of the grant was a public engagement and outreach piece, which you've heard about a little bit prior to, but I thought I'd refresh everybody's memory how we got to where we are today. So the city went into contract with SCI Consultants, which David is online if you have any specific questions for him on that. We held a couple of public engagement events as well as a survey to see if people wanted any other types of cannabis uses besides the state minimum standard. We presented that outreach to you at your December 4th, 2024 meeting, at which time the city council gave direction to staff that you wanted to only do the state minimum standard for the code update. So what is before you is the state minimum standards. So we did not go above and beyond. We did not permit anything outside of that state standard. So on that, going into that minimum state standard. So essentially what is required of every jurisdiction under the SB 1186 is that you have to allow what's called a non-retail store or a non-storefront retail use that does medicinal delivery. And so what that use is essentially it is a facility that is secured, that has cannabis medicinal products, Granted, cannabis products in the state of California are not divided between medicinal and recreational. They're all the same thing, but essentially it clarifies the type of person who is purchasing or getting access to that product. So essentially what these facilities are is these are secure facilities that are not open to the public. They essentially have product delivered, it is secure, and then as the enterprise receives orders, whether that be over the telephone, over a website, they will then deliver that medication essentially to a prescribed medicinal user. So they would not be delivering to recreational users. So you can't just pick up the phone and call them. If I were to call one right now, they would not deliver to me because I am not a card holder. So they would have to have a medicinal card. They would have to have a medicinal prescription from a viable provider. And so that is the type of use we are discussing. So that was what you gave us direction to allow within this ordinance. And so that is what is in the ordinance updates. And so essentially what we did is we went through, and because the city of Yreka historically has prohibited all cannabis uses, regardless of recreation or medicinal, excluding personal gardens. You do allow personal gardens. People are allowed to have their personal garden at their home. We do not really regulate that. Pros and cons to that, but won't go into that one. You do allow that. So the medicinal non-retail storefront use essentially has a couple of different requirements in terms of operations that are state required. So security planning, surveillance, employee requirements. So you have to be 21 years or older to work at these facilities. You are not allowed to have members of the public on there. So there are those operational standards that are required for these types of businesses moving forward that mimics the state minimum standards. So we are not recommending anything above and beyond those standards. From my personal experience with other jurisdictions, those standards are quite high. So there's really nothing I would recommend on top of those at this time for personal safety. On top of that, because you prohibited all cannabis uses previously, you have no zoning for cannabis uses. And so one of the things we did is we are recommending an update to Title 16, which is zoning, that essentially allows these medical non-retail storefronts in similar types of use zones as other comparable uses. So like pharmacies, liquor stores is one of them too. So our initial recommendation is to allow it in downtown commercial C2, commercial highway CH, and light industrial M1, where you find similar uses. We did add in here that because it is not open to the public, and therefore people would not be going to it, it would not be attracting customers or clients. We would recommend prohibiting it in the historic downtown area because that is more geared towards those active uses for that type of thing. You can allow it within the historic district if you so choose. You may augment these zoning recommendations if you so choose. We are just going off of your existing regulations and similar use patterns within that for that recommendation. So in addition to the zoning in the cannabis facilities themselves, they will be required to have all of the state requirements. They will have to have inspections. They will have to have bonding requirements. They will have to have live scans for all employees. So those are codified within your Title V business operations and regulations, where that's more appropriate to have those types of chapters. And then what the SCI consultants and your city attorney has worked very hard on is your what we would call a cannabis business permit ordinance chapters. And so what this is it's essentially a process that we as staff would follow in order to gauge whether an applicant is awardable or not for a specific permit. The initial recommendation is to allow 3 licenses for these types of uses within the city. No more. You can change that number if you so choose. We don't recommend going lower than 3. One of the things that has occurred with these types of very restricted uses is that if you go too restrictive, it could be considered a takings, which is essentially you're programming it to be prohibited, which you can't do within the state code, essentially. So we do recommend 3. You can add to that. We're not recommending that at this time because we don't really know what the market is going to be for this type of license. 3 is pretty standard for a lot of communities of this size. So the cannabis business permitting chapter essentially gives my staff the ability to accept applications. It gives us the ability to evaluate those applications for completeness, to determine if someone is going to be a good performer, within those metrics. And then once that business permit is awarded, having this chapter section allows us to also revoke that license if they're in violation, suspend that license if they're in violation, or any other types of issues that come up with that permitting. So for example, if you have a business within the city that is not performing to a state code or a city standard, we would then go into a suspension of their license and a hearing for that permit to see if that permit should be revoked because that person is not a good player. So essentially what this does is it holds the cannabis users to a higher standard than your typical business, and it holds them to the standards that are specific to that business. So cannabis businesses themselves. So the use of kind of a broad permitting system allows you as a council in the future, if you want to add more uses, you can. We're not recommending that. Essentially what it does is it cuts down on cost of my time, your city attorney's time, or consultant time for updating your ordinances every time something changes. And so having a broader permitting system that applies to every type of use and keeping it that way, that's kind of what we apply to our other zoning regulations. So when someone applies for a conditional use permit, it's one similar process for all conditional uses. We don't have a conditional use permit for quarry mining. We don't have a different conditional use permit for liquor stores, although you can if you so choose to do that. But we figure having broader systems apply to a lot of other uses that you don't have to keep going back and tweaking it with state changes or other type of political will changes. And so this is a pretty common fashion to have a very standardized cannabis business permit process. So in summary, because there's quite a bit, and we have multiple times that we can talk about this. What we did was we went in and also cleaned up some of our chapters, just again for different verbiage, different updated definitions, which is really important within this industry, and then modernizing some of our sections to be current best practice. So with the cleanup, the construction of a cannabis business permitting system for us to be able to evaluate those permits, and then the zoning updates that essentially, again, would only allow the non-storefront retail use, delivery for medicinal cannabis. So again, no recreation, no in-person buying. So just to clarify that, you would have to call or go online and order your prescription, and they would deliver it. That is essentially what we're doing. Okay. If you want to go really in depth into cannabis, we can, but we kept it very simple for you just to meet the state minimum standard.
Okay. Are you ready for some questions?
Go for it.
Okay, Mr. McCoy, any questions? Mr. Middleton?
No questions. We've been going over this for quite some time, or at least I have, so no questions.
Mr. Davis?
When I was in the gun
Excuse me.
business,
Excuse me, Drake, Madam Mayor, can we stop the conversations in the audience, please? It's been continuing and I cannot hear when the speakers or somebody else is talking, so we can have point of order. No conversations in the audience. Please.
Thank you. Yes, no conversations at this point in the audience. Thank you. Mr. Davis?
you. We had a wholesaler, but those firearms were tracked by the Department of Justice and the ATF. Is this medicinal marijuana have such tracking devices or businesses involved?
Yeah, so I can't remember what the software is currently called. I believe it used to be called Codex. It could have a different name at this point. So essentially, from the time that you have a cannabis seed, it is assigned a batch number. And then that seed is cultivated and that has a batch number that stays with it through that time that tracks that individual plant. And so that batch number can either stay with the plant and become a flower product, or that batch number then goes to a distributor that then takes it to a manufacturing process. But essentially, the state has a mandated software system that all cannabis uses within the system have to abide by. And so what you can do is you can actually, if you go into a dispensary, they have these little labels on everything and it has their batch numbers. And you actually can scan the little, usually it is a, the little line codes, ICB codes, is that what it is? The little codes you see at the grocery store, they have those and they are mandated on every label, and you can actually scan it and you can go into the state website and you can actually see where your cannabis came from and where it's tracked. And so that is required by state law. So this medicinal cannabis will have to have the same labeling standards as every other product that's on the market. And so in addition to the code where you can track the sourcing of that product, you also are also required on the label to have the testing where the testing was done for the different products, because each product going to market has to be tested for fungicide, insecticides, fertilizers, things like that, that you really don't want to put in your body. And so you can actually go and find that testing facility. You can find that number of that quality control piece. And then each individual label has to have the amount of cannabinoid that's within each product. So CBD, CBN, THC, a number of all of those other things. The only thing that they do not track on this product is any hemp related product, which is a completely separate thing. So your I always get them confused. I believe it's the Delta 9 THC, which is typically derived from hemp, would not be in these products. And so that's a completely different consumer protection law, as opposed to cannabis, which is typically from the female plant. Hemp and cannabis are the same thing. They're just different plant sexes. But essentially, you can look up that label, you can look up where that product comes from. So these products, regardless of medicinal versus recreational, have to follow that same batch code. They have to go through the same quality control measures as every other product on the market.
Thank you. You hear some horror stories about, private enterprises slipping in on these medical things, distributorships, and I was kind of concerned how they prevented that. And that does explain.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Claire? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what we're here for this evening. Is basically, if we have questions, this is the time to ask questions. And then if we want to see any changes to the ordinance, now is the time to bring them up.
Yes.
So that when we move forward with the first and second reading, those issues have been taken care of.
Yes. And it would be nice that if you do want to change anything, that you come to consensus at this time, or if you're not at consensus, I would ask that you kind of take a vote on that. Again, once we bring something to a first reading, if you want to change anything and it's substantive, it has to go through another first reading. And so we don't really have time for that, unfortunately. So that's why we're giving you this more open kind of discussion piece, to be able to kind of ask these and kind of play off of it, so that we can make all of those changes before the first reading at your next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay.
Just to clarify the part about first reading, at first reading, you can make changes and it's amended as introduced. So, first reading doesn't mean we would then need to come back another time for first reading. At second reading, however, if you make substantive changes, then we have to have another first reading. So I completely, completely agreed. Now's the time. If you've read through it and there's criticisms, there's comments, there's explanations, we can talk through it. If there's additional things you want added, we can discuss that. And we can also explain why that can't be done or how it can be done. And so this is a pretty hefty ordinance for sure. And SCI drafted it. I made some edits to it, made it fit into your code, and then took it that next step to where it's not just dealing with section or chapter 5.30, that it's also going to address 16-100 and 925, 926, and I think 927.
Yes.
The 926, 925, 26, 27, they're not, all the changes aren't put in here. That's to keep this down to under a lot of pages. Those changes are primarily going to be focused, the bulk of those changes, as far as the length of it, is going to be changing marijuana to cannabis. And there's, when you adopted your code, the nomenclature was marijuana. Now, under California law, the preferred term is cannabis for a whole lot of reasons. So that part has been changed in, or that terminology has been changed in 530-16-100. And then it's just not presented here what those, that's just a type, a spelling change more than anything. Throughout the meanings of 925, 26, 27 largely going to stay the same.
And an item that I did forget to touch on is the sensitive use buffers. So there are state mandated sensitive use buffers that we did not have codified, which we will now codify into our code as well to become compliant, which is essentially no cannabis uses can be located within 600 feet as the crow flies to any school, commercial daycare, youth center. So those are also added to your regulations.
Thank you. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that I understand this. You said
Sure.
that this is delivery only.
Correct.
So a person could not call up. Would a person be able to call, order their prescription, and then meet in front of the business for the delivery?
No, they would not be allowed to do that.
Okay.
Yep. So you would have to be a card carrier as well. So you would have to give your patient number. So what a lot of people don't realize when you go into a cannabis facility or you make a delivery or you order a delivery, you have to give your driver's license information or you have to give your medical card information. And they actually scan that into the system. And that you actually can only purchase a certain amount of cannabis per day. So I'm just going to do recreation as an example. So if I were to go into a cannabis retail facility and want to buy something, they will scan my California driver's license or whatever driver's license you have. They create a profile on the statewide system that intercommunicates to all of the different dispensaries, and it shows that you have purchased this amount of product. And so there's certain levels for each thing. There are different levels for medicinal as well. So there are restrictions on how much medication you can get as a medicinal user on a given day or 24-hour period. And so essentially for this specifically, when you call in, you or a registered caretaker who has to be associated with your card can call in. They give your patient number, they confirm your patient number, and if it's valid, then they will take your order. And then they record that on your profile and essentially report, they've ordered this much today. And so that also prevents fraud within the system of people taking their card to multiple different dispensaries and buying too much and then selling it, things like that. So there are a lot of fraud and consumer protections within there as well. So if you were to have surgery and you're prescribed cannabis as opposed to a narcotic for whatever reason, afterwards you have your prescription. You can call in your prescription with your doctor, similar to a pharmacy. They will confirm that. And then they will come and deliver your product to you. So you would have to be at your registered residence that's associated with you as a person in the medical system or with your medical card. And they will come to your property and deliver that. And there are regulations on the delivery drivers as well. They are all live scanned. They are only allowed to carry a certain amount of product. They are not allowed to carry cash. They are not allowed to take payment at the door. So you do have to pay remotely through a credit card.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I don't have any other questions at this time, but
Okay.
I do have some comments to make after public comment. So I will open it up for public comment at this point in time.
Madam Mayor, there's one other point, is a follow on to your question. Can you go to the delivery facility? You can't. As Mr. Casey said, the delivery also has to be made to a residential address. It cannot be made to, I'm standing here at the park on the northwest corner, deliver to me there. No, that's not the way it works. It has to be to an actual physical address.
Thank you.
Louise Gliotto, Yreka. I have some questions, and I know that you're not supposed to talk to the community, but maybe it could maybe someone else on the council would have the same question. I thought when we got the grant that there was something in the grant saying that you get X amount of money, I think an extra 15,000 or something like that, if you said that you would agree to hire an equity person. And so when I looked up the definition on that grant, because equity can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, it meant someone who already had a prior record of drug problems, either selling drugs or a drug user or something. So that wasn't mentioned here tonight. The other thing that wasn't mentioned, and I don't know the stats on this because it's been a while, because it was last Christmas that this got passed. When I called some of the other cities in our county, I talked to Aetna, and it was at that time, Cliff Munson was the mayor. He knew nothing about this California law. And I suspect, and maybe Juliana can clue me in on this and correct me, but I suspect that Yreka is the only city that did this. I'm pretty sure that Aetna didn't do it because they didn't know about it. They talked to their attorney. The county did nothing about this particular law. And I'm really concerned and upset about, in fact, I'm bringing back Lorenzo again because he's talking about transparency. And correct me if my memory is wrong, but I remember that this was brought up last year, and there was a council meeting in which Mr. McCoy was not here. And the mayor at that time was Corey Middleton. And he said, I don't want to make a vote on this. I want to have a full council to do this. And I appreciated that. Well, lo and behold, just before Christmas, there was a meeting held about this, accepting this grant and doing this and complying with this. And at that time, we had 2 city council members that were missing. It was the mayor that was missing, Colleen Baker, and Drake Davis were missing. There were 3 people on the council at that night. They had a vote, and it was 2-1. And the attorney was there at that time, and I think it was asked, is that considered a quorum? 2-1 voted for it, and it was Dwayne Kaeg that voted against it. And they went ahead and passed it with 2 council members. Now, I distinctly remember the mayor at that time said, I don't want to take a vote unless we have a full council meeting. So to me, that does not set well with me. It makes it look like something that was planned, and it didn't look transparent to me. It left a bad taste in my mouth, and it made the council look less than honest. So that's my complaint about it. And then to call that they have a prescription, it's not a prescription, it's a recommendation. It is still a Schedule I drug, whether you take it for medicinal purposes or recreational. And Juliana made that point that it's the same product. It's just whether or not you have a card or not have a card. There was a person, it was a doctor who advertised, this is when John Lope was the sheriff, and he had advertised when we had a newspaper that he was going to be in Siskiyou County, and you could get, quote unquote, a prescription from him. And so I called because I was curious about that. And I said, hey, if I want to have a medical marijuana card, how do I do this? He said, well, you just come and see me and we write out something for you. I said, do you do a physical exam? Do you find out if we have any history or any kind of medical problems that we should be aware of, perhaps maybe atrial fib or something like that? He said, no, we just do it. I said, is there a follow-up? And how do you know how much to prescribe? This is not a true drug, and it's not done according to standards of a prescription or a true medication. So that's my complaint as a retired nurse. You can get Marinol from the pharmacy here. I called in town. It's very, very cheap. Medicare covers it. Medi-Cal covers it. It's a synthetic marijuana, which has a specific dosage, and there's follow-up on it, and they find out what your medical history is. So I'm very much opposed to this, to the whole thing I'm opposed to. We've got enough problem in our community with drugs. You look at people that were on that hill. A lot of them started out with marijuana, maybe not all of them, but we have a drug problem here in our community. And I think that sets a bad example to our youth. And we have a person on our city council who's involved in the marijuana and the grows out there, and to tell me that this is safe and it's been followed through all these regulations. They've had people from Southern California come here and buy drugs from those cartels out there. They're using drugs out there that are banned here in the United States. They've got Chinese labels on them. And so people in Southern California who are going to quote unquote a pharmacy or a dispensary and thinking they're getting something that's regulated, they're not. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment at this time? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council now for discussion. Mr. McCoy? Mr. Middleton? Mr. Davis?
I'm good.
Mr. Claire? Okay.
For tonight.
So I have a couple of changes that I would like to see made to this, and I would just request that you guys do a spell check on the final version of this.
That's all good.
Thank
And
you.
I can take your notes after this as well. It'll help me kind of remember. too.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Did you want me to answer those questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Love it. So first thing is talk about the equity program that's associated with the grant. So in our grant application, we kept the equity program very broad. And so essentially the equity program, all we have to do is do technical assistance and potentially fee assistance for those who may have a difficulty affording the cannabis business permit application. And then technical assistance is essentially what we already do. So we do free pre-application meetings with all potential applicants. So that would count as technical assistance. If someone is struggling with their security plan requirement or struggling to meet one of those requirements, we would then sit with them and assist them with that technical assistance. So that meets the equity program. So we are not going to hire anybody. That's not part of the grant. It's not required. Compliance with state law. So similar, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
The equity.
Yeah.
So to answer the speaker's question, that is included at page 136 in the staff report under subsection D of 530090. And as Stacey was just mentioning, there were 3 aspects of accommodation. Social equity would be provided as for as required under the grant. 2 of them are required, other is proposed. The fee waiver to allow qualified parties who
just a second.
are able to demonstrate a social equity need. It would not be required to pay the application fee. The other one, as Stacey said, was technical assistance. That's been amended here so that it's not it's free, but it's not as much time as staff has. It's to be proposed here as a recommendation that an applicant get 5 hours of technical assistance. That's to prevent a flood of applicants taking up all of Juliana's time during application season and being bombarded with that request for technical assistance. And then the priority aspect is included in here. That's one proposal that SCI made. It's been done in a number of cities elsewhere. And so that is given some kind of framework here so that it isn't everyone gets posed as social equity and so that group comes at the top of the list. It would effectively be one party that we give priority for that. The social equity requirements are under 53420 at page
136.
Well, no, at page 164. And the social equity applicant criteria are either some aspect of an arrest related to cannabis or marijuana crimes happening prior to November 8th, 2016. So that would qualify someone to be a social equity applicant, or someone who has
SDI, Social Security Disability, CalWorks, Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and is at 60% of the median income or below for your county. And then the other requirement for that is if the applicant group, more than 50% of the applicant group, is an individual or a group of people, half of them, then would have to be members with either of those two qualifying social equity qualifying criteria. I know this is probably one of the areas where there's going to be critique. I want to get it out at the forefront. We've given it a lot of thought as to who would apply, how would it work, and what those 3 areas where they could ask for assistance would be. And did we touch the recommendation versus prescription?
No, I haven't done that. If you want to talk about recommendation versus prescription thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
that's fine. Yeah.
quickly do that. The speaker was correct about that. California, there are not prescriptions. Prescription is governed by federal law and state law. But federal law has as the speaker mentioned, Schedule 1. Federal government is, let's talk about them changing that to decriminalizing. It doesn't mean that necessarily that would mean a prescription would be used here. The term of art in California is a doctor's recommendation, and that's what gets you into the medical medicinal side of things, the medical cannabis side of all of this. So.
Thank you. I don't deal with the medicinal side very often, so just a linguistics thing. In terms of compliance with state law, this is going to be a very general statement. But really quick, just reading 1186, I was wrong about one thing. This actually was enacted and took effect in January 1 of 2024, not 2025. So essentially, 1186 reads, in the circumstance where someone does not allow it. So if a local jurisdiction would prohibit adopting or enforcing regulation, so if they prohibit retail sale by delivery for medicinal use, essentially the patient, the primary caregiver, has an ability to sue the city. And they also add the attorney general, other parties otherwise authorized by law. It essentially, and I talked to your city attorney so you can fill in a little bit. Someone can come to the counter tomorrow and ask for this, and you are not compliant. So per the state law, if someone wanted a non-storefront retail to deliver medicinal cannabis at the counter tomorrow, I would process them. Now, your attorney has a little bit of a different, if you deny them, but essentially I have to abide by state law. And if you ask me to break state law, I could lose my accreditation. I could lose my job. And so I would process them pursuant to the state regulations, which usurp your non-compliant local jurisdictional regulations. And so because I don't have a cannabis permitting system or a process, I would essentially just tell them they get a business license. So it's very similar to your short-term rentals. Your short-term rentals, you have no ordinance regulating those specifically, but they're a valid business within the state of California. And so they come in, they get a business license, they report their TOT. That's it. You have no special regulations around that. And so again, if someone wanted to do this, I would process them. Now, in the case of the city attorney's recommendation is if you were to compel me to deny them, they essentially can sue you for not being compliant with state law. You will pay your attorney to go to court. You will go to court. The court will look at you and go, this is state law. You have to give them a permit. And now you have to pay lawyers' fees. So that is applicable for any state law. That is applicable for any jurisdiction that is not in compliance. So you can go to Aetna, and Aetna could not be aware of a state law, and they would be in the same circumstance as we are right now, where they could have a person come in, want to do this use, and then they get to have the fun time of figuring out, okay, what do I do with this circumstance? Speaking to your last item on your agenda, it's a gray area. And so how we proceed is really kind of not ideal. Because again, the city council could be upset at me for granting that permit because you haven't authorized that via your local municipal code, but I also can't violate state law. Or if I do deny them, they can now sue you, they will win, and you will pay out a bunch of money. So that is just generally any state law. So any city that's not compliant, the county, I mean, they make their choices and you can make yours too. You don't have to move forward with this. Again, you then put me in the gray area of having to make that determination at the counter, which is not ideal for anybody. So
I'll just clarify here, there is a difference of opinion here. I give the legal advice here, and that is not my legal advice. What you've just heard the last 3 or 4 minutes there, that is not my legal advice. That is Juliana's take on things. I still think there's a fair amount of gray area here on this issue. But I do strongly encourage you to address this issue as soon as possible, since you're taking it up and you have the grant.
we don't want to be put in that position. So,
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Is there a deadline for having this in place?
so there's a deadline for the grant, which is you have to have something adopted by the end of October.
Okay.
But in terms of like actual for us to actually move forward, like we just said, with compliance with state law, if I get someone tomorrow, we're in a conundrum at that point, right? So we kind of need it really ideally with these types of situations where there is a significant law change like this, we would propose ordinance changes prior to that law taking effect or shortly after that law taking effect. So really what should have happened is we should have had this conversation in late 2023 and passed regulation in anticipation for that January 1, 2024 date. We didn't. So we're rectifying that at this point. Sooner rather than later is kind of the recommendation.
Okay. So I'm going to get back to, I just have a couple of changes that I'd like to see. On page 160, down at the bottom of the page, item C, it says that retail delivery services shall be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. through 9:00 p.m., 7 days a week. And I would like to see that changed to actual pharmacy hours. And I believe that most pharmacies in Yreka, my research is that they close at 7 p.m.
We can look at that. There is state law that addresses hours of operation. So we can look at that and see what we can do.
Okay. And then there was a lot of discussion about social equity accommodations, and I would like to see the fee waiver removed from that process. And my thinking on this, not that my thinking process on this is that the requirements for security, the processes itself are very, very, very
cumbersome,
extensive and expensive. And so my line of thinking is that anybody should be able to afford the fee for this business license, this licensing process, if they were starting up this business. So I would like to see that removed.
So the fee yet hasn't been set. And in some cases, that fee isn't just a couple $100s. In some cities, those fees are in the tens of thousands of dollars. The grant application specifically identified fee waivers as one of the things to be, I think, considered.
I need to check. I need to check if we can remove it, if it could be considered or if it's a requirement.
So what I'm getting at here is it's written here as an absolute fee waiver. And I can see where there would be some criticism of that, or what you're saying. A middle ground or alternative might be a partial fee waiver or things of that line to be compliant with what the grant says and still address your concerns about basically underfunding the program. So we could evaluate that as well.
Okay.
Bring back some options.
We'll make sure that any of these, if there is I'm writing questions like that as well. So if there is a question of if we can't take it out, when it comes back to you for first reading, we'll be very explicit about pointing that out if we can't and why we can't, if that's the case, but we will do our best.
Okay, thank you. And the technical assistance, assistance from staff for up to 5 hours, is that up to 5 hours available to any applicant?
Just the social equity program. So you would have to be a qualifying person within those categories to get that technical assistance. But that we would still do our pre-application meetings, which typically are anywhere from half an hour to 1 hour. So they
With
would
all the applicants?
all of the applicants get.
Okay, so I don't qualify under the social equity accommodations. This is just a general question.
Yeah.
A hypothetical question. I don't qualify, I'm applying, and I have some issues, some concerns. I need some help with my security plan. Would I be able to come in and sit down with you and talk about my security plan and what and my issues addressed with you?
So it will definitely depend. So how we typically do it, so I'll do it from the circumstance of a general application. And so this is for anybody, it's not just cannabis. So if someone has a CUP or even this one, a security plan, and they have a question or they need some guidance, if it's a quick like, hey, I have a question about how many hours do I need to have the video stored on site, or how many hours of video do I need to keep stored? I can answer that pretty quickly and I will help someone with that. Now, if someone comes in and goes, I don't really know what a security plan is. What do I have to put in it? Why is it required? I would then probably back up a little bit and say, you know, I would recommend contacting a contractor to help you with that. I know there's a number of different private entities that will do that type of consulting work with these types of businesses. And so I would recommend that you contact one of those businesses. On top of that, we cannot recommend specific businesses over another because of competition. And so I would just recommend people Google that. Look at other applicants in other cities and try to see how they did it, or contact another applicant in another city and who they worked with, or do that. So it kind of depends on the scale of the question. If it's something that I can like rip off the top of my head, I will answer it. But if it is a more extensive request and they are not a social equity applicant, I would recommend that they contact a consultant.
Okay. And is the technical assistance portion of the social equity accommodations, is that a requirement of the grant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I should say it's mentioned in the grant as one of the many things that you can do as a social equity program. And so that's what we're putting it here, we're having the discussion, trying to figure out what will be right for your city in your minds as the policy as to social equity and what's required by the grant. So.
Thank you. I'd like to see that changed from 5 hours to 3 hours.
Okay.
That's what I have. Okay. Thank you.
We don't need to check the spelling of any of that. You're good. Yeah.
Okay. Last chance, council members. Okay. Thank you so much.
Right. Yeah, we will. So what we'll do is we'll take those notes. We do have one thing we didn't mention with the last item is we will hold planning commission tomorrow. We will take additional public comment tomorrow at that meeting. We're also we've noticed your first reading as a public hearing. We'll take public comment at that again. And so we have a couple of other opportunities for people to give that comment. And then if there's any other questions, please let me know ahead of those meetings. Happy to talk to you about it. It's one of the few areas where I get to flex both of my undergrad and grad degrees. So fun.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our city manager staff reports. Mr. Elsner.
Council, tonight, we do not have any staff updates or staff reports from staff.
Okay. Do you have any report for us as the city manager?
I We have a lot going on at City Hall, but I don't have anything specific to share tonight.
Okay, thanks. Um, um, the mayor, council member reports, statements and requests. And this evening, we're gonna mix it up just a little bit. As the previous mayor used to do once in a while and change the order up, I'm gonna go first this evening. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that this last week has been a heavy week for our nation. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm aware that people have been affected deeply by national issues. So having said that, I continue to have my Friday chamber hours beginning at 2:30 on Fridays here in the chambers. On September 5th, I attended a Teen Challenge gala fundraiser. And I'm continuing to work with individuals that are interested in creating a citywide beautification project. And so that's pretty exciting to me. The other thing that I would like to do this evening is I would like to create an ad hoc committee consisting of the mayor and the mayor pro tem to review our code of conduct that was adopted by the city council on September 5th of 2002. And compare it with the applicable sections of the Yreka Municipal Code to bring those into, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. To make those compatible. And the ad hoc committee will bring its findings and recommendations back to the council for full council consideration. And the time frame that I'm looking at is to have our recommendations to the city council by the end of April. Hopefully, the city council can then review those and adopt something by September 2026. And that's all I have. So, Mr. Davis, any report, comments?
Well, yes, the Fire Safe Council met, 5 of us. All the rest of them were out fighting fire. There wasn't any U.S. Forest Service people there, and there wasn't any CAL FIRE folks there. Chief Lemus was in attendance, and he reported basically that the Newton property was underburned and did the underbrush burn. And that's right by my home, so we were concerned about that. And they did a very great job. So that's my report.
Thank you.
And my house is still standing.
Mr. McCoy.
I want to thank Mr. Elsnab and Public Works for getting out and continuing to work in the warm weather on the roads. There's been a lot of patching going on. It really looks good. I would also, Mr. Elsnab, like to ask you to put on for a November I don't know if we're having 1 or 2 meetings in November because we haven't adopted a calendar for this year yet. But add homeless camp / property choice, property purchase, establishment of a homeless camp in the city of Yreka. I'm getting just three people alone today talking to me about the homeless and the issue. And then we had the woman that sat up here that owns Bella Arts, and I'm getting either called or hit up every time I go out about the concern for it, and people just want to see the city take a more active role in it. And we know that we rolled out we rolled people off the hill for a reason. We probably rolled them off a little early, just like we rolled off our camping ordinance a little early because we don't have the ability to serve them. We need to be able to serve those people. So we need to, so I mean, it's going to mean there aren't grants right now, so it's going to mean some money out of our pockets, but we need to do something about it. We owe our citizens of Yreka that. So I'd like for that to be on the first, as a discussion item on the first November meeting, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Mr. Middleton,
Nothing. All right, thank you.
Mr. Claire,
Very much.
May I speak?
Mr. Davis.
Mr. McCoy, I want to kind of reinforce your statement that I was approached by people in the community that are interested in an urban campground. That's kind of what you're talking about. It's the same thing. So maybe the council should look a little bit more a little deeper into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting.